The seat next to me on the 6:47 train was always empty by the time I got on. That was the deal I had made with my commute. Board at Riverside, get a window, spend 40 minutes reading, or pretending to read while the city slowly assembled itself outside the glass. It worked for 2 years without interruption. Then one Tuesday in October, it did not work. I had my bag on the seat next to me, which I know is a thing people hate, and I only did it because the car was half empty, and there was no reason anyone would need that specific spot. But a woman stopped in the aisle, looked at my bag, looked at me, and waited. Not impatiently, not rudely, just waited, like she had all the time in the world and was prepared to stand there until I caught up with the obvious. I moved the bag. She sat down, settled a canvas tote between her feet, pulled out a book, and opened it to a page somewhere in the middle. She did not say thank you, but it was not rude either. It was just efficient. She had a seat. She was using it. Transaction complete. I went back to my phone and tried to remember what I had been doing before. She was reading something with a bright orange cover and no title visible from my angle. Her hair was dark, cut straight across the bottom, and she had the kind of posture that made me feel like I was slouching even when I was not. Which, to be fair, I was. At some point between Riverside and the downtown bridge, I noticed she was laughing quietly to herself. Not loud, just a small private thing. The way people do when something hits them in exactly the right spot. She did not look up to see if anyone had noticed. She just let the smile sit on her face for a moment, then went back to reading. I looked back at my phone. When we pulled into Meridian Street Station, she closed her book, tucked it into her bag, stood up, and walked off the train. I watched her go without knowing why. She did not look back. That should have been the whole story. Except the next morning, I got on at Riverside and she was already there. Same seat, same canvas tote. Different book, this one dark green with a cracked spine. She did not acknowledge me, but she moved her bag from the aisle seat before I even reached her row, like she had been expecting me to need it. I sat down. We did not speak. The train moved. She read. I actually read this time, because for some reason I did not want to be the only one staring at a phone. This went on for 3 weeks. Every morning, same car, same seats, same wordless arrangement. She always had a book. I started bringing one too, which I told myself was coincidence and which was obviously not. Once the train stopped between stations for 11 minutes, due to some signal issue, and the whole car got restless except for her. She just kept reading. I kept reading. At one point, our shoulders touched and neither of us shifted away. I still did not know her name. By the 4th week, I felt genuinely ridiculous. I was a 31-year-old man who taught high school English and had assigned students essays on the theme of taking chances. And here I was commuting next to the same woman every day. Like we were 2 houseplants sharing a windowsill. So on a Wednesday, when the train was running slow and the car was warmer than usual, and she closed her book a stop early and just sat looking out the window, I said, "Good book?" She turned and looked at me like she was deciding something. "It's uneven," she said. "Strong first half, falls apart at the end." "What's it called?" She held it up. The cover said something about cartographers and the sea. "It's about a mapmaker who spends his whole life charting coastlines that keep changing," she said. Which sounds like a metaphor, but the author insists it isn't. "Is it?" "Obviously," she almost smiled. "I'm Adrian." "Will," I said. She nodded once, like she had already figured that out and was just confirming. After that we talked a little most mornings. Not a lot. She was not the kind of person who talked for the sake of filling space, which I learned quickly and respected immediately. She was a structural engineer at a firm downtown. She had grown up in Portland, moved here for work, did not especially love the city, but had stopped hating it after year 2. She ran on weekends. Not races, just running. She said the difference mattered. I told her I taught 11th grade English at Garfield, that I had meant to go into writing, and had somehow ended up in a classroom, and that most days I did not mind the detour. "Most days," she repeated. "Yeah. What about the other days?" I thought about it. The other days I assign essays on taking chances and feel like a hypocrite. She looked at me then in a way she had not before. Not warm, exactly, but something that was paying close attention. What chance aren't you taking? I did not have an answer ready, so I did not give one. She did not push. The train reached her stop and she stood up and said, "See you tomorrow," and that was that. But I thought about the question for the rest of the day. Longer than I should have. November came, and the mornings got darker and colder, and we started getting on the train already wrapped in coats. And at some point the book thing became a habit. I could not imagine the morning without. She read fast, always a different title each week. I asked her once if she kept a list. She pulled out her phone and showed me a spreadsheet. 83 books since January, rated on a scale of 1 to 10, with a column for would reread and a column called Made Me Actually Feel Something, which only had 11 entries. This is very organized for someone who runs without a goal, I said. Running without a goal is extremely organized. You just organize around what you don't want to do instead of what you do. I wrote that down when she wasn't looking. I didn't know why at the time. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the train was packed. We ended up standing in the aisle near the doors, holding the same overhead bar. The car swayed. Her shoulder pressed against my arm and stayed there because there was nowhere else to go, and I was aware of that shoulder in a way that made it difficult to think about anything else. "Plans for Thanksgiving?" I asked. "My sister's in Bellingham. I'm driving up Wednesday night." "Long drive." "She makes good pie, worth it." "What kind?" "Brown butter apple, there's cardamom in the crust." I had no intelligent response to that, so I just said, "That sounds like an 11 on your list." She laughed. An actual laugh, not her usual small version. The woman standing across from us glanced over. Adrian seemed mildly surprised by her own reaction, which was the part I liked most. The doors opened at her stop, and she squeezed past me and stepped off and turned back briefly. "Happy Thanksgiving, Will." "You too," I said before the doors closed. I spent Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Evanston, thinking about cardamom in a pie crust and whether that was normal. When she got back on the Monday after, she had a book I recognized, one I had actually taught before, a novel about a man who spends 10 years building a lighthouse nobody asked for. "That one's good," I said. She looked up. "You've read it?" "I teach it." "Which part do you assign?" "The whole thing. But I make them focus on chapter 9, the part where he realizes the lighthouse is already finished, but he keeps working on it because stopping would mean deciding what comes next." She was quiet for a moment then. "That's the best chapter." "I know." She went back to reading, but something had shifted, or maybe I just noticed it more that morning. She laughed twice at things in the book and showed me one passage without me asking, holding the page over so I could read a paragraph about a man watching the sea and wondering if the sea was also watching back, in its own slow, impersonal way. "He's not really talking about the sea," I said. "No," she agreed, "he's really not." December arrived. The city got its lights up. The train got more crowded with shoppers. Our mornings stayed the same, reliable in a way that had started to feel less like routine and more like something I had quietly arranged my life around. One morning I got on and she was already there, but she did not have a book. She was sitting with her hands in her lap, looking out the window, and her jaw was set in a way I had not seen before. "Bad morning?" I asked, sitting down. "Bad week." I waited. "A project I've been on for 2 years," she said. "Structural review of a bridge renovation downtown. My firm lost the contract. Political reasons. Nothing to do with the work." "I'm sorry." "It's fine." The way she said it made it obvious it was not. 2 years of calculations and site visits and meetings about meetings. And then someone makes a phone call and we're out. "The work doesn't matter." I thought about what to say. "The work exists," I said finally, "even if they don't use it. You built something whether or not they credit you for it." She looked at me. "That's very teacher of you." "Is it wrong?" She considered. "No, just annoyingly optimistic. I can be more pessimistic if that helps. Don't. I get enough of that at the office. She turned back to the window and the city slid past, and after a minute she said quietly, "Thank you." I did not make a thing of it, but I thought about it all day. The Friday of that same week, she got on with a book again. Normal. We rode most of the way in comfortable silence, and at her stop she stood and gathered her things, and then paused in a way she did not usually pause. "There's an architectural history exhibit at the Chicago Cultural Center," she said. "Open Saturday. I was going to go. If you wanted to come." I looked up at her. She was looking just past my shoulder, which was new. "Yeah," I said, "I'd like that." She nodded, back to her usual composure. 10 o'clock. Then she got off the train. I spent Friday night trying to read and failing at it. The Cultural Center was everything she had predicted, and everything I had not expected. She moved through the exhibit differently than I moved through it. Slower near the technical drawings, faster near the photographs, stopping completely in front of a cross-section diagram of a suspension bridge, as if it were something she needed to memorize. "This one," she said, pointing. "What about it? The tension distribution. Look at how they balanced it. In 1931, without computers, without modeling software, someone just thought through it carefully enough that it worked." I looked at the diagram and understood approximately 12% of what she was describing. But I understood the feeling underneath it, the thing she was actually saying, which was about work done quietly and correctly, about being right even when no one is watching. "Like the lighthouse," I said. She looked at me. "Exactly like the lighthouse." We had coffee afterward at a place 2 blocks from the Cultural Center, small round tables, no music, a chalkboard menu, written in someone's careful handwriting. She had an Americano. I had the same because I could not find anything else I wanted. We talked for almost 2 hours. Not about the exhibit, about her father, who had also been an engineer, who had taught her to read blueprints before she could read chapter books. About the fact that she had almost gone into architecture instead, that the line between the two fields was mostly about what you wanted to be responsible for. About my first year teaching, how I had been so determined to make the books matter that I had forgotten to make the students feel like they mattered first, and how a kid named Theo had told me that to my face in October, and I had not slept well for a week afterward. "Did it change how you taught?" she asked. "Yeah, completely." "Good," she said. "Theo sounds like he was paying attention." We walked to the train afterward. It was cold, the real Chicago kind, and she had her coat buttoned to the collar and her hands in her pockets. We rode the same line back, but in different directions. At the transfer station, we stopped on the platform, and the wind came through from the tunnel and she pulled her collar up. "This was good," she said. "Yeah," I said, "it really was." She looked at me for a second with that expression I had started to recognize, the one that was deciding something. Then she said, "See you Monday," and walked toward her platform. I watched her go. Again. Still did not know why that was a thing I kept doing. Monday she was on the train when I got on. Normal. Tuesday, Wednesday. The rhythm held, and now it felt different, like a thing we had both agreed to, but had not said out loud yet. On Thursday she was not there. I sat in our seats and told myself she was running late, had missed the train, was working from home. I checked my phone. I had no way to reach her. In 2 months of mornings and one Saturday afternoon at a museum, I had never gotten her number, which suddenly seemed like an oversight of almost offensive proportions. Friday she was not there either. I rode the train both days feeling the empty seat in a way that was hard to explain to myself, like a sound you are used to that has stopped, and now the quiet is louder than the noise ever was. By the following Wednesday, I had started questioning everything, whether I had misread the exhibit, the coffee, the walk to the train, whether I had said something in that conversation about Theo and teaching that had landed wrong, whether "see you Monday" had meant exactly what it sounded like, or whether it had meant something much more ordinary that I had turned into something else because I wanted to. Thursday morning, a text came from an unknown number. No greeting, just, Meridian Street Station, Platform B, 5:45 Friday, I'll explain. I stared at it for a long time. I typed back, okay. Platform B at 5:45 was not a commuter setup. It was the express line that went north toward Evanston, the opposite direction from downtown. Adrian was standing near the far end of the platform when I got there, wearing the same dark coat, a travel bag over her shoulder, hair tucked under a knit cap. Hi, she said. Hi. Trains in 4 minutes. Okay, I looked at the travel bag. Where are we going? My sister canceled on Thanksgiving, but she still has that pie. She looked at me steadily. I thought, if you didn't have plans Saturday, Bellingham is about 3 hours by train. We could go up and come back Sunday. I looked at her. You're inviting me to your sister's house. I'm inviting you to cardamom apple pie and my sister's house, in that order. And you disappeared for 10 days to come up with this plan? Something moved across her face. Not embarrassment exactly. More like someone standing their ground while knowing they are on soft terrain. I needed to think. About. She looked at the platform, then back at me. The train lights appeared at the far end of the tunnel. About whether I was doing what I usually do, which is decide too carefully. Make sure everything is measured before I move, and by the time it's measured perfectly, the moment has already left. I thought about the lighthouse chapter. About working on a thing past the point it needed more work. So you texted me at 6 o'clock in the morning, I said. At 6:14, and yes, she paused. I'm not entirely comfortable with that, for what it's worth. The train pulled in, and the doors opened, and she looked at me. I haven't been to Bellingham, I said. I know. I've also never had cardamom in a pie crust. I know that too. I picked up my bag. Let's go. We found 2 seats facing each other near the window. The train moved north through the city and then out of it, and the buildings gave way to trees, and then a particular kind of flat open sky that Chicago does right at dusk, going dark at the edges and still pale in the center. She had a book in her bag, but she did not open it, I noticed. She noticed me noticing. Don't make that face, she said. What face? The one that means you think something matters. Doesn't it? She looked out the window. Ask me again in Bellingham. Her sister's name was Dana, and Dana was exactly the kind of person you could see Adrian having grown up alongside. Same posture, slightly warmer, someone who laughed first and evaluated second. She had made the pie. It was as good as advertised. We ate it at a kitchen table while it was still slightly warm, and Dana asked me questions about teaching with genuine interest, and Adrian sat across from me being slightly more relaxed than I had ever seen her. That night, Dana made up the guest room. Adrian and I stood in the hallway after Dana had gone upstairs. She likes you, Adrian said. Good. The pie almost made me move here. She smiled. The real one, the full version, which I had seen exactly once before on the train, when I said something about the spreadsheet. I should have done this differently, she said. What differently? I should have just asked you on the platform some Wednesday morning instead of disappearing, and then texting you 6 weeks later with a train schedule. 14 days, I said, not 6 weeks. You were counting. You were gone. She was quiet for a moment. I kept rehearsing the version where I asked you normally and it went wrong. I do that. I run the failure scenarios first. My dad called it engineering brain. My therapist calls it something less flattering. I call it the same thing you said about running, I said. Organizing around what you don't want, instead of what you do. She looked at me for a long moment. I said that 2 months ago. I wrote it down. That surprised her. I could tell, because she did not have an immediate response ready, and Adrian always had a response ready. You wrote it down, she repeated. In my notebook. I teach, remember? Everything goes in the notebook. She looked at me, and the door that had always been open an inch swung the rest of the way. Okay, she said, quietly, like she was agreeing to something bigger than the word. Okay, I said. Sunday we took the afternoon train back. We sat side by side this time, her shoulder against my arm again, but nothing pressing us together now. Just where we had ended up. Somewhere outside the city, she opened her bag. She took out a small folded piece of paper and held it for a moment, then handed it to me. I unfolded it. Her handwriting, neat and architectural, exact spacing, no failure scenarios, just this. I folded it carefully and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I reached across and she let me take her hand, and she turned to look out the window and I could see her smiling at the glass, trying not to let it show, and absolutely showing it. We pulled into Meridian Street Station just after 4. The platform was nearly empty. We walked out together into the cold, her canvas tote on her shoulder, my bag on mine, the city going gray and gold around us, the way Chicago does when it's trying. She had taken the same train every morning for 3 months before I got on it. She told me that on the walk home. Quietly, like a fact she had been holding. I stopped walking. She kept 2 steps, then turned to face me. The streetlight made her eyes difficult to read, but I had been studying that face long enough to see what was underneath. Not defiance. Not apology. Just truth, offered plainly, because she had decided I deserved it. You knew my stop, I said. I knew your stop. The seat. I chose that car because it was the one you always boarded. I let that settle. How long did you know who I was? Since September. A colleague of mine has a kid in your class, she mentioned you. Said her daughter came home one day talking about a chapter in a book about a lighthouse. She paused. I looked you up. Your school bio, a few things you'd published. One piece in a teacher's journal about why you make students write about failure before they write about success. I stood very still, and then you got on my train. I got on your train. She held my gaze. The seat thing was not an accident. Neither was the book on the first morning, which was one I knew you had taught. I looked down the street. Cars moved through the intersection without knowing any of this was happening. The spreadsheet, I said. Real. The spreadsheet is entirely real. The bridge contract. Real. All of it, after that first morning, was real. I did not plan the conversations. I did not plan the exhibit. I did not plan any of the things I said to you. She stopped. But I planned the beginning, and that part is true, and you deserve to know it. The cold was very specific all of a sudden. I felt it in a way I had not felt it on the platform 20 minutes ago. Why didn't you just find another way to meet me? I said. A colleague, an introduction, anything. Because I was afraid if you saw me in a normal context first, you would see the version of me I can control. The professional one. The careful one. Her voice stayed even, but something behind it did not. And I thought if I sat next to you on the train, and you just got to see me reading, and laughing at something, and being bad at small talk, maybe that would be the real version. Before I had time to edit it. I did not say anything for a while. Down the block, someone walked a dog. The dog stopped to investigate a crack in the sidewalk. Its owner waited without pulling the leash. The thing you wrote on the paper, I said finally. No failure scenarios. Just this. Yes. You wrote it before you told me. Yes. So you had decided to tell me. I had decided that whatever happened, you would know the whole thing. She looked at me directly. I have spent a long time making sure people only see the parts I approve. I did not want to do that with you. I thought about the lighthouse. About a man who kept building past the point it needed more work. Because stopping meant deciding what came next. I need to walk, I said. Okay. Alone. I know. She did not reach for me, did not argue. I'm sorry, Will, for the way I started it. I nodded. Then I walked. I walked for about 40 minutes through the neighborhood, going darker and colder, and thinking about what it meant that every real thing had come after a false beginning. The spreadsheet was real. Dana was real. Cardamom pie and 3 hours on a train and a piece of paper that said, no failure scenarios, all of it real. But the first morning, the book she had chosen, the seat she had taken, the wait that had looked like patience but had been something more deliberate, that had been constructed. I had been a variable in a plan I did not know I was part of. I thought about what I had told my students that fall. That the first draft of anything is always partially a lie. That the real writing happens when you go back and tell the truth about what you were actually trying to say. I stopped at the corner of two streets I did not immediately recognize and stood there for a moment. Then I got out my phone and typed, "Same train Monday?" The reply came in under a minute. "I'll be there." I typed, "Orange cover or green?" A pause, then surprised by you, "No entry yet." I stood on that unfamiliar corner, and something loosened in my chest that I had not realized had been tight. I typed, "See you Monday." I walked home. I made bad pasta and ate it at my desk and read 20 pages of a novel I had assigned my students, about a woman who builds her house wrong on purpose so that the view from every window is slightly unexpected. I had taught it 3 times. I had never understood it as well as I did that night. Monday morning I got on at Riverside. She was in our seats, no book in her hand, just sitting, watching the doors. When I sat down, she did not say anything right away, neither did I. The train moved. The city came and went in the window. After a while, she reached into her bag and pulled out a book with a bright yellow cover I had not seen before. She held it so I could see the spine. "New?" I said. "Started it this morning." She opened it. Strong first chapter. Might fall apart at the end. Might hold together. She glanced at me sideways. "I'm planning to find out." She went back to her book. I went back to mine. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, assembling itself out of small ordinary pieces, each one in the exact place it needed to be. I think about that Sunday train ride back from Bellingham more than I probably should. Not the romantic parts, though those matter, but the moment Adrian handed me that folded piece of paper, before she had even told me the truth. She had already decided she was going to tell me. She had written it down, committed to it, before she knew how I would react. That was the part that got me. Not the confession itself, but the decision that made it possible. There is a version of this story where she never says anything, where we get on the same train every Monday morning and fall into something comfortable, and I never know that the first seat, the first book, the first wordless arrangement was chosen and not accidental. I would have been happy in that version probably, but I would have been happy inside a story with a wrong foundation, and Adrian understood something I have tried to teach my students, and mostly failed to teach myself. That what you build on matters as much as what you build. I have spent a lot of time thinking about what it takes to actually tell the truth when the truth might cost you everything. It is not about being a good person in some abstract sense. It is about being honest enough with yourself first, about what you did, why you did it, and what it means to sit across from someone who trusted the story you gave them. Adrian had run every failure scenario. She had organized around what she was afraid of losing, and then she chose to be honest anyway, not because it was safe, because it was right. That is a harder thing than most people give it credit for. What I keep coming back to is this: the plan she made was born out of something real. She had read something I wrote, recognized something she wanted to understand better, and instead of waiting to be introduced, she found a way in. That is not a character flaw. That is someone who looks at a problem and finds a path through it. The flaw was not telling me. The courage was fixing it. I think about Theo, the kid who told me to my face in October of my first year that I had forgotten to make students feel like they mattered. He was 14 years old, and he said it directly, no cushioning, because he had decided that the honest version was more important than the comfortable one. It cost him something to say it. It cost me something to hear it. And it changed everything that came after. That is how it works. The hard thing said plainly, received without running from it, and then the choice about what to build next. Nobody gets a clean beginning. Every real thing has some complicated first chapter. The question is whether you are willing to go back to that chapter and read it honestly, instead of skipping to the parts that reflect well on you. Adrian and I are still figuring out how to do that. Some mornings it is easier than others. But on every morning, she gets on the train and sits down, and she does not have a book in her hand when I arrive. That part, I know, is entirely on purpose.